Hi, my name's Tim Norris from Concho Hills Guest Ranch, and this is my lovely wife Marilyn Norris, who's normally behind the camera.
Thanks for joining us.
So today she's going to help me with this little demonstration on why we transition to a leverage bit. And at Concho Hills we try to live by the golden rule of horsemanship. And what's that, Marilyn?
Be as light as possible, but as firm as necessary.
Exactly. So in order to be as light as possible, we transition to a leverage bit. Now, a lot of people don't understand that, because if you read or look at a lot of the videos that are available online today, everybody is emphasizing the amount of force that a leverage bit applies. But that is not the purpose of transitioning to a leverage bit. So there's two primary functions depending upon the type of mouthpiece on your leverage bit. But what we're going to do today is explore this in a little more detail. Now, we've been riding horses for just about 5,500 years. Did we start in February or March? I don't.
Seems like.
Yeah. So anyways, no, we're not really that old. But fortunately, we have just thousands of books that are written on the subject. A lot of people will rediscover what has been written in the past. As one person says, the rituals are remembered long after the reasons are forgotten. So we're going to take a look at these reasons. And the reason for going to a leverage bit is not to apply force. And this is an excellent book, Rinesmen of the West by Ed Cannell. And I just want to tell you what he says about the application of force. When too much pressure is applied to the bit, to the bridle reins, the horse's mouth is going to be hurt. He will forget about the signals because of it. Then he will go against what the rider is trying to teach him or get him to do. So that's really important. What we're trying to do with a leverage bit, one of those two reasons, is to increase the signal to the bit, and that's what we want to demonstrate now. So this is the simplest of Western bits. This is called a grazing bit. It has a little tongue relief and the mouthpiece, but other than that, it's a fixed bit. And just to show you how this would work, if my horse's mouth would pick up the bit like this, and this all-important part of the bit, called the curb strap or curb chain, if it happens to be a chain, goes behind the horse's chin, and to, well, believe it or not, that's called the curb of the horse. So the idea is, as we pull back on the reins, the curb strap comes up underneath the horse's chin, and now it becomes the fulcrum of the lever. And that is also explained very clearly in this book, Bit Biting in Spanish Horses by A.R. Rojas. So as we pull back on the bit, the curb chain goes tight, and when that happens, now my horse should stop. It's just that simple. Curb chain goes tight, horse stops, or curb strap, depending upon what you have. So it's also very essential that whenever you're using a leverage bit, you use a curb strap or a curb chain to limit the bit's travel. Now, obviously, my hand is not as thick as a horse, so the bit travels a little bit further. But that's the idea. I pull back on the reins. If the curb strap goes tight, the horse stops. But why do we go transition to a curb bit then if we don't want the force? Well, let's explore that. So what we're going to do is we're going to just rotate the bit like this for demonstration purposes. And for our little model or demonstration model here, I have a curb strap here on this end, which is just a piece of leather taped to the bench. We have our pivot point, which is the mouthpiece, just like what the horse head is pivoting around the mouthpiece. And then we have the end of the cheek piece or the shank from the pivot point down to the end. So what we're going to do is demonstrate the effects of having the pivot point in the middle of the bit versus having it further toward the end where the reins connect, or what is known as the purchase rings. All right, so let's get into this and see what it looks like. Right now I have our pivot point right in the center of the yardstick. So as we simulate the neutral position, that is the part where the curb strap is loose behind the horse's chin, we're going to do that by pushing down on the end here. And if we take a look, we can see that the end of our cheek piece comes up to the yellow here, the yellow mark, right? Now, as we remember, as we pull back on the reins and the curb strap comes tight, now we're down here where the curb strap goes tight. We're starting to apply force to the horse's bit, and that's where we stop, right? We don't want to cause pain in the horse's mouth. So the concept is the curb strap goes tight and the horse stops.
That's why this is in the red. It means stop.
Good. Now, if we take, and again looking at, we were from the top of the yellow down to the red. All right, so that's how much motion we had to move the reins from our neutral position to where the curb strap went tight. Now, this is all I'm going to do is change the pivot point, which would be the same as moving the mouthpiece closer to the top of the purchase. That is to say, we're changing the mechanical advantage of this simple lever. So now we're going to move it so that we have a 3-to-1 ratio. Okay, so as we set this up, and you can see that I'm going to tighten or go back to where my curb strap is loose, and look up here at the top of the green where the end of the cheek piece is. Now, by again pulling back on the reins and going till the curb chain goes tight, you can see I'm back at the red again. So, look at this time how much I was able to move the reins from here to here versus the yellow from here to here. So I have that much more signal that I can present to the horse. That is to say, the horse will feel it coming and he will have more time to respond, which is one of the reasons why we go to a leverage bit. So we're changing our mechanical advantage, and we're coming from the top of the green there, whoops, my pivot point is moving, down to where the curb strap goes tight. And that's quite a difference in movement. Now notice that the mouthpiece down here is moving the same distance from the tip of the table down to the tight curb strap. All right, so I mentioned that we have a second reason for going to leverage bit, and that has to do a great deal with the type of mouthpiece that we choose to ride with the bit. And most Western bits will have either a grazing bit like this, where the mouthpiece is very, very simple. The portion here just works on the bars and the lips of the horse. There is some tongue pressure that's provided here, sometimes this is a straight mouthpiece or a mullen mouthpiece, and a lot of times though, we have a higher port on the bit, and that is to help us obtain a certain headset and a certain neck position with the horse. And if you think headset and neck position, your mind should think about collection, which is what every rancher needs to be able to keep his horse in if he wants him to respond really quickly. The horse must be collected. And there's a person by the name of Deb Bennett, Dr. Deb Bennett, and I have included her URL in the links below, and she has written the most fabulous paper that I have read about collection, because that's also a rather misunderstood area. I can go through the function of a leverage bit, but there's a gentleman by the name of Darren Stoner from The Perfect Bit, and he has made such a beautiful model and explains it very well, and I can improve on it. So what we will do is just take a look at his video on how the horse gets relief standard Western bit or a high ported bit. All right, let's listen to Mr. Stoner for a minute.
With the perfect bit, and we know it's hard to visualize what's happening in a horse's mouth. So what we've done here, we've made a plexiglass mouth so you can see what's going on. So this would be like the roof of his mouth, and then the bit will lay on his tongue. So you can see here we have a ported bit. The port is designed. I'm going to show you what it's really designed for, and it takes a while to train for it. And the rider pulls on it. Well, you can see the angle of the port that it is now. Well, it doesn't line up with the horse's mouth. So the pressure and release training that we do is for this. How does the horse get off of this? It's not stop. What it is he'll drop his head, and you can see it's not hitting him no more. The rider pulls again, changes the angle of the port. The horse lines his head up with it, and it's not hitting him anymore. So a port is designed for headset. It's just for headset.
Thank you, Mr. Stoner. We did send him an email and get permission to use this video clip. So the idea behind a leverage bit is not about force. It's about increasing the signal and changing the headset and raising the neck of the horse to put the horse in collection. And when you're working cattle, that's exactly what you need, is a horse in collection. And there's a gentleman and his wife by the name of Pat and Deb Puckett. They have a internet site called The Disciplined Ride, and they're on YouTube as well. And he has hundreds of free hours of videos on Western riding, and I highly recommend it. He does a fabulous job. The focus of a leverage bit being about pain and the severity of the pain is wrong. The focus should be on increasing the signal and changing the head position of the horse, depending upon which mouthpiece you have. And as pointed out in Mr. Rojas' book, Bits, Bitting, and Spanish Horses, there are more horses whose mouth has been torn up by the snaffle bit, which is considered to be, well, it's a direct reining bit, but it's considered to be the least severe of the bits. And the reason why is because it doesn't determine, or the bit doesn't determine if a bit is severe or not. What determines if the bit is severe are your hands. So, before you ever transition to a leverage bit, you should have most of your work done. You should be riding off your seat. You should be using your legs like we do at Concho Hills. By doing that, you minimize the amount of time that you're using the reins and the amount of pressure you're applying to the horse's mouth, so that we can live by our golden rule, which is
Be as light as possible and as firm as necessary.
Exactly. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and hopefully it has cleared some things up about signal and how far that we get to move our hands for the same amount of rotation and the bit in the horse's mouth. And that's a huge change. So that is why we want to use a leverage bit. Thank you.